Hello there, I'm Lisa Burkhart Worley along with Michelle Burden and Renee Rollins, and welcome to Pop Talk, the show where you never know what topics might pop up. And guess what? We are broadcasting this show from the National Religious Broadcasters Convention at the Gaylord Texan Hotel in Grapevine, Texas, just down the road from our studio. But, you know, we still stayed at the hotel, some of us, you know. But anyway, we have a great show for you today to start it off. We're going to be talking with two governmental leaders that are making a difference in Washington, D.C. And Renee will have the first introduction.
Hey, thanks so much, Lisa. Our first guest here at NRB is Kimberly Genau. She is the executive director and founder of Alabaster House. Through this outreach, Kimberly leads devotionals, prayers, and appointments of chapel times for members of Congress, congressional spouses, governors, and first spouses. So exciting. She also hosts governmental retreats and other ministry gatherings, along with her husband, Randy Genau, who is also the co-founder of this organization. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Renee. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Hey, listen, we're so glad to have you. Can you just share with us how this all got started?
Sure. Back in 1998, I was actually hired by a prominent evangelical leader, Dr. D. James Kennedy. And so I was actually brought on as one of his first Capitol Hill liaisons in his office. And that really was just a fancy word for missionary to Capitol Hill. So it was just an incredible time. You know, they said to me, how do you want to reach the Hill? And I said, I don't know, let me go home and pray about it. And I went home and prayed about it. And I felt like God just said to do coffee, you know, women, coffee,
Right.
It's a thing.
Yes,
So
it
that's
is.
how we started off, and we heard from members' testimonies as well as the spouses' testimonies, and you'd be surprised. People actually
Right.
gave their life to Jesus right there in the U.S. Capitol. So that was our beginning.
Wow, so this is an evangelical effort as well, correct?
100%, yeah, absolutely. Those are the rare, literally rare gems that you find. But we have had the opportunity to lead different leaders to the Lord up here on Capitol Hill. And of course, that news doesn't usually sell on the regular news cycle. But we're here to tell you there's hope in Washington, and God is still alive and well.
Yes, I love
That's
that.
awesome.
I love that. So how have congressional leaders and their spouses embraced the opportunities that you're giving them through Alabaster House?
I probably would cite one of the most incredible things I think that we do. We often talk horizontally, as we're doing today, but at Alabaster House, we really try to encourage these leaders to go vertical. So that means connecting with God individually. And one of the things that we do is, Renee mentioned the chapels. And so you can imagine the pictures where the Capitol perimeter was all surrounded by razor wire. I took one of those rare pictures of me inside the rotunda by myself. Right, we were leading back-to-back chapels at the time for members of Congress and congressional spouses, so together. So I think that's how are they responding. On a lighter note, we had one congressional spouse come in who hadn't been with us before, and she looked around the room and she started to see all of the women kind of just easing back in their chairs, and you know, they're all, everything's perfect, you know, and their hair and everything. And she's looking around like, what is going on? And they said, you're gonna love it. This is like a spa. And so what they were really saying was the presence of God, right? Words to
Yes.
describe the peace of God that you find literally right there in the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, it's intimidating to walk into an event for anyone, you know, especially if you don't know people and you're trying to go into an event that's a Christian event. I know. We put on a conference every year. It's about to happen. And I'm going to have to talk to you because one of our initiatives is to level up pampering. Okay, so we're going to talk. But you do hold a couple of other events called the Capitol Spouses Retreat, and you also do a congressional marriage retreat. So what all are you trying to accomplish there?
Those are great questions, Lisa. I think one of the most important things that we can do, remember the constituency. They're leaders, they're very busy, often their spouses are at home, back in this home state, the district. And so when we're talking about specifically the Congressional Spouses Retreat, that's for spouses of government leaders. So not only Congress, but it could be the court, right? It could also be ambassadors, spouses, you know, 3 branches of government. So what we again want to do there is we give them a time to gather together, but we also are situated out on 10 acres So we have benches all across the property. So we'll have a reception, time together, a brunch, and then we send them out onto those benches. And what I love is we have a prayer list, basically an email update that we send out. So if you want to sign up, find us at alabasterhouse.org. It's a great way to pray, but we'll let people know how they can be praying for us. And the spouses, usually they say, they're never going to ask you how they can pray for you, but they'll know, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, no pressure. But it really is God that will let us know, because they really can't tell you when you ask them what's a prayer need.
Right.
They're really not going to give you something authentic. So you really have to trust God to know what is going on in their heart. And I have to tell you, some of them have even said to us, I swear you would have read my journal, which is super fun. And that really is the collective prayer of the community. Joining with a ministry like Alabaster House that's on the front lines, and they're able to partner with us in that prayer.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit can tell you what's going on.
100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I was really wondering what it's like to be in Washington, D.C. and do a leadership summit. How often do you do that? I want to hear about that. And it's bipartisan, right?
Right.
So tell us about that.
So we just pioneered the Leadership Summit in 2024. Save the dates for September 10th and 9/11 of 2025 up on Capitol Hill. It really was fabulous. Our quotes that we got from there, we did round tables, and we had members of Congress actually sit at the tables with our participants. That in and of itself was what they said was gold, right? It was just revolutionary, because most leaders will come in, they'll give a speech, maybe you're fortunate to get a Q&A, but to actually spend time with them. And it was really derived, frankly, out of crisis, out of the pandemic, and wanting to equip business executives as well as ministry executives just to see around the corner what might be happening, because as we know, those were hit very hard, right? Ministry shut down and businesses were closed.
That's right.
So the Leadership Summit is a place to get equipped and to actually develop really your own leadership.
Well, that's great. I love that. The pandemic definitely did try to shut ministries down. In fact, we went online for our television shows for a while, and we did some little vignettes because we were trying to encourage people during the pandemic. So you have to do what you have to do.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you try to connect with regular people as well within government through another initiative called GO, which is short for Government Outreach. Tell us about GO and how people can get engaged with that.
That is also really joining with us in missions. So if you think you want to go on a mission trip, come to Washington, D.C., right? You can find us at alabasterhouse.org. There's a tab that you can click on that says GO, Government Outreach. And so that's a way that you can partner. We can take you behind the scenes to see what really is happening. A lot of times people have a burden to pray. And around key times like the inauguration, an election, a transition of power, a new speakership, whatever, right? So often you'll find intercessors that'll literally get on planes. They'll come to Washington, maybe they'll prayer walk the Capitol or prayer walk the White House. But often this is the catch that I find. I want to share James 5 talking about the effective fervent prayer of the righteous availeth much. But I find that a lot of the intercessors come in and they're praying in their paradigm, like, in other words, Washington is corrupt, it's evil, and so we have to pray for these corrupt criminals.
Yeah,
but they're unaware that there is a huge constituency of actual believers that feel it's their call to serve God in Congress. And so we can help equip and educate and also bring them behind the scenes and interact with some of those very leaders. So what happens is a paradigm shift happens in their mind, and then they go back to their churches and they say, you wouldn't believe it. But these are people that love God just like you and I, and we need to pray for them. So GO is a part of doing that, and we really want to get some folks, some missions groups, different churches to be a part of that. So sign up at our website.
Well, I know you've talked about some stories, but could you share some more things and more stories about how you're impacting governmental leaders? You don't even have to say their name. We know that some of this is private information.
Confidential.
You can tell us after, but no. No, but if you could share some stories, I'd love it. Just how you're impacting them.
Right. I think one of the things strategically that we see in Washington is a lot of polarization and division, and everyone can recognize that. So back in 2015, we started this program off talking about coffee. And so we launched something called a Capitol Christmas Coffee. And that actually was at the time where Leader McCarthy was going for the speakership. So it was a very polarizing time. We just happened over the years. Now we've been there for 26 years, serving as a spiritual resource to elected leaders and their families. And because of that, as you mentioned, Michelle, confidential prayer, biblical devotions, and friendship, those are our 3 pillars. And so being there for so long, we had built relationships with different people of opposing views. And so we were able to bring some of those key players together in that early coffee back in 2015, which we thought actually changed the spiritual atmosphere there on Capitol Hill, restoring relationships that were not even speaking to one another. People weren't even speaking to one another. And so that was really a highlight of bringing people together, and it was bipartisan. And so every year we host an annual Capitol Christmas Coffee. So
Love it.
That's
Love it.
great. And I think you have to develop trust. I think with anyone, but especially on Capitol Hill. Hey, we didn't ask you about how you got the name Alabaster. Can you talk about that real quick?
yeah, our logo, when you go to our website, you'll see it. It has 3 columns, and that's the 3 branches of government that you'll see there. Around it is the olive branch. It's extending peace. And then, of course, in the center, well, there's 2 things. Up high, you'll see the eagle, the governmental eagle. And then the middle is really a jar. So it's that alabaster jar. And as we know, that really has to be broken in order to be poured out. And so for us, it's symbolic of, even though these leaders are at the top often of their careers, they are still broken vessels, right?
That's right.
And they need prayer, they need support, just like you and I do. And often, you know, they're thought of in the realm of, I want to say, like a boxing match. And so we're throwing darts at them, and it's just easy to take them out. And we lose the humanity part of it, where they have kids, they have families, they have struggles. And so Alabaster House really is symbolizing also the Holy Spirit, and just pouring out that jar, that broken vessel, and that we all need God in our lives.
So beautiful, and I'm sure they have to have that strong face all the time. So it's good that they can go to a place where they can be vulnerable.
Yes.
That is actually one of the quotes also from one of the members of Congress, is that we're known as a refuge, really this safe place where they can get out of this rat race of Washington. And even if it's just a moment to help cultivate strength in their marriage. We talked a little bit about, you know, the marriage retreat, and just giving them moments where they can tuck away with their spouse instead of shaking a bunch of hands at a reception and your spouse happens to be there. It's a little different, you know.
Big difference.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for sharing about Alabaster House. What a great outreach ministry. And I wish you all the best. We'll be praying for you. If you need some prayer, let us know. We love to pray.
Absolutely. I would suggest our listeners go to alabasterhouse.org. Speaking of prayer, and that you could sign up for our email updates, and that'll actually give you the information on how to pray, and also be invited to some of our future events. Like we mentioned, the Leadership Summit on Capitol Hill, specifically weaving together business, ministry, and government on 9/11. So there's actually a really historic piece there, again, to be praying for. And so September 10th and 11th. But all that information, you can connect with us on our website at Alabaster House. And of course, I just want to thank you all so much for having me, and our listeners could also support right, the work that we're doing. There's a great donate button there as well. So we're looking forward to connecting.
Thanks again, Kimberly. And that email address is, or that website address is alabasterhouse.org. alabasterhouse.org.
Overcomers TV, streaming now. Download our app on your smart TV, Roku, Apple TV, and more.
Our next guest is Keisha Toni Russell. Keisha is a constitutional lawyer with the First Liberty Institute, the largest legal organization in the nation that defends religious liberty. I've heard Keisha speak, and she is a powerful presenter. She's also worked as a federal law clerk in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, everybody, and has written a new book called Uncommon Courage, Defending Truth and Freedom While There's Still Time. It is great to meet you, and I just want to thank you so much for defending our religious freedom.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
You know, Keisha, I was just thinking how we were really in a downward slope in losing our religious freedom. And I feel like, where are we right now? Do we need to still keep fighting? You know, where are we at? And you have a great pulse right now. So share with us what you're feeling.
So the good news is that in President Trump's first administration, he appointed a lot of great federal judges who believe in defending the Constitution.
Yes.
And so we're seeing the fruits of that now.
Yes.
But certainly there's still a lot of work to be done. We're still seeing a lot of attacks. First Liberty gets so many requests for legal help, and more than we could ever take. So there's still a lot to be done,
Well, maybe the government's changed, but the people haven't, right?
That's right.
People are still out there on social media tearing down free speech and also our religious freedom, and we get attacked when we try to defend it, don't we?
Absolutely.
Well, in your book, Uncommon Courage, you speak about tyrannical regimes, and we know that this has happened in many countries. We're unusual here in the United States. But what are some of the warning flags that we need to look for of tyranny in a nation so that we can become more aware?
So one of the first things that will let you know if you're dealing with a tyrant is that he will begin to persecute the religious, because the religious have a higher authority, and a tyrant doesn't want you to have any other authority but him. And so he wants you to only answer to him. And when he steps outside of his power, he doesn't want criticism. He doesn't want you to say no. And oftentimes, if you're a Christian and you believe in the Lord, you're going to obey God instead of man. And a tyrant cannot tolerate that. The other is the freedom of expression, freedom of speech will also be attacked. And that is because tyrants don't like criticism. They don't want anyone encouraging the population to defy them. And so free speech will go away, and we saw both of these things very prevalent in, say, Nazi Germany and Stalin, Stalin's regime. All of that, that's exactly what happened there, is that they attacked freedom of religion and freedom of speech.
We are. It reminds me of that story in the book of Daniel, where Daniel, they were criticizing him because he was worshiping God for 3 times a day, and so they wanted to persecute him, throw him in the lion's den. So, I mean, sounds like it's very similar.
Absolutely. And so I tell Christians who say, oh, Christians are not supposed to be a part of politics, or they're not supposed to defy the government, and I say, which Bible are you reading? Because a lot of those people in the Bible had to stand up to the government in order to obey God. It's all over the scripture.
Absolutely.
I cannot help talking about what I've seen and what I've heard.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. The
Well, I know that
disciples, come on.
Yes. I know that we have a separation of church and state in this country. It's no secret. So how involved should the church be in protecting our religious freedoms?
Oh, heavily involved. I think the church has a critical role in educating their flock and making sure their flock knows this information, like what you're sharing right now, and also making sure their flock knows the truth, right? Because when it's the truth you know, that sets you free, right? And so you can't be deceived if you know what the truth really is. And unfortunately, our education system, our media system are all designed to deceive us and encourage us to disobey God's standards. And so it's important that the church educates the flock so that when we go out into the world, we can preach the truth.
Man, that's powerful. And I was just sitting here thinking, I don't know, I think a lot with my heart. And I was thinking, what can I do so that I'm not getting into arguments with people, but I'm speaking truth. I mean, how do we remain compassionate, without compromising our convictions? Talk with us about that.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to engage in productive conversation, right? So the idea of casting your pearl, knowing when to engage and when not to. Because some people are just out to tear you down. But some people are really thirsty and hungry for truth. And so you'll have to discern that, you know, in your conversation with that person, in your relationship with that person. Oftentimes social media is not really a good platform for that. But not always, right? Not always, but so it's just up to us to figure out, is this person really wanting to have a productive conversation, a sincere conversation, or are they just trying to tear down me and God?
Well, and I think also really it's so much, I agree with you, because it's the power and the presence of the Holy Spirit guiding us continually, because there's so many times that we wind up, in essence, going at people when really it's the enemy that is in motion.
Yeah, and so even in our case at First Liberty, right? So, for example, I have a client right now, Marisol Castro, 32-year veteran teacher, and she is being disciplined right now because she has a small little crucifix in her private space at work. Yes. And we're having to sue in order to pursue those rights, in order to protect her rights. And so these are the things I think about, because a lot of people ask me, do these people really need to be this way, or are they just ignorant? But when we write you a letter detailing the law and you still persist, then you know we're dealing with a spiritual problem.
That's right.
Right? It's not just ignorance. There's something else going on.
Hey, I would have gotten in trouble in school. If I was in school today, right, I would have gotten in trouble because I probably would have had a cross or Jesus or my Bible, you know, right on my desk. So, yeah, I mean, we've got to defend that, and we've got to defend it for our kids and our grandkids. So, Keisha, what are some ways that we can differentiate between what is just and what is unjust when it comes to religious freedom?
That's such a great question. So, and I get a lot of people to ask me that, but it's as soon as the government usurps God's role in your life, that's how you know. So if you're a ministry and all of a sudden now you can't serve the homeless because the government says, for example, one of our cases, Pastor Bell in Ohio, he allows the homeless to come into his church at night during the freezing temperatures. They don't have anywhere else to go. And the government told him he can't do that. Okay, that's a problem.
Right.
Okay, because it's interfering with his ministry and his ability to serve and love others. And so that's usually the boundary. You know, as soon as it starts to usurp God's role in your life, then you know there's a problem.
Well, you're going against culture. And anytime there's a counterculture, there's always going to be issues.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
You have a background in education as well. And we see this a lot. So what problems do you see in the education system in this country?
Yeah, there are a lot, unfortunately. I don't know if you saw the Nation's report card. I think it just came out a couple weeks ago, and almost half of students can't read at grade level. Now that is absolutely preposterous, because if you're not teaching students how to read, what in the world are you teaching them?
Come on.
Like, that's like the basic, right? And so, number one, we need to improve the education that our students are receiving, and the other, we need a comprehensive education that includes things like civics, the value of the Constitution, the fact that Christianity informed the Constitution, that our founders believed in the fact that if you give man too much power, because he's corrupt, he will try to control you and he will become a tyrant.
Right.
And the way we address that is by what? Separating the powers, right? So that's why we have a separation of powers. Different branches of government, state and powers split between the state and federal government. That is a biblical concept that has been infused into our Constitution. And if our students don't understand that, then they're not going to understand how their freedoms came about and why they're so valuable and why they're so important.
Why do you think we've gotten to this point?
You know, I think what has happened is that over time, the culture has become more and more antagonistic towards religion, more and more antagonistic to absolute truth, more and more antagonistic to the fact that their desires are not the boss, right? And so I think the Bible is contrary to all of those things. And so the reason why is because Christians are a reminder to the culture that God is absolute truth. And there's no getting around that. And I think there's definitely some conviction there. And so the culture tries to silence us and keep us quiet. But the best thing we can do is proclaim the name of Christ and proclaim the truth of the gospel. Because that's what we're here to do, and that's how we set people free from the bondage that the culture is trying to keep them in.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Keisha Toni Russell, for defending our rights in this
Yes.
country. You are brave, and I just love what you're doing. We all love what you're doing. And your book is called Uncommon Courage, Defending Truth and Freedom While There Is Still Time. You can find Keisha at her own website, KeishaToniRussell.com. Keisha, and that's spelled Keisha, Toni, Toni, Russell.com. And or you can navigate to the First Liberty Institute where she works, and their website is firstliberty.org.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for being with us today. And if you'd like to connect with us here at Pearls of Promise Ministries, you can go to pearlsofpromiseministries.com. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. We're on Facebook, X, and Instagram. And you can also find us at pop_ministries. All of our past shows and award-winning documentaries to fight anti-Semitism are on our Pearls of Promise Ministry YouTube channel.
And thanks once again to our show hosts today, Lindell TV and Overcomers TV, as we come to you from the NRB Convention Expo. We're just ordinary girls.
Who God turned into pearls.
Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Overcomers TV, streaming now. Download our app on your smart TV, Roku, Apple TV, and more. How would you like to partner with Overcomers TV? Become a ministry partner, spreading the good news about your ministry and Jesus Christ. We're selecting ministries for upcoming episodes of Answering the Call. We can also help you produce your own show. Partnering with us is easier than you think. Just visit our website, overcomerstv.live. Be an overcomer today with Overcomers TV.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupted this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.